Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting if you email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Our show today, we got Angie Solomon. Now, she is the mother of a young man, Grant Solomon, who passed away far too young and far too early under very mysterious circumstances, like a one-car accident where he ran himself over in some way. So there's a whole bunch of people. I want you to check out this GoFundMe called Justice for Grant. Because Angie, his mom, is trying to raise money here for an autopsy and to exhume the body and to investigate all of this craziness here. The website is called Freedom for Gracie with the number 4, freedomforgracie.com. That's where you can find all the information. On Twitter, you want to go to Dr. Angie Lee, Dr. Angie Lee, Lee. And on Facebook, it's Freedom for Gracie on Facebook. I hope we got everything covered there. Angie Solomon, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, Ed, for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before we get into the whole story about Grant and his very mysterious circumstances here, tell us about yourself. Who is Angie Solomon?
Well, I'm actually a Huffines by birth, so my maiden name is Huffines. I'm from a very small town in Tennessee, population maybe 1,500, one traffic light that always blinks yellow, and moved to Nashville for college to play basketball and on to pharmacy school. And I'm a pharmacist and have been a practicing pharmacist for 26 years now. I usually am in the retail setting, particularly at one of the large corporations, which is my favorite, taking care of patients. And of course, and first and foremost, I am mom, and that is my title and has always been. It was my only dream to be a mom, and I have beautiful Grant, who did pass, or who was taken from us July 20th of 2020 at the age of 18 plus about 6 weeks. And then I have a beautiful daughter, Gracie, who was 13 at the time, who is now almost 18 in October, junior in high school. And Gracie, Grant, and I, and I know this is about me in particular, but it would be amiss to say that we are all domestic violence victims, and we're all domestic violence survivors who became thrivers, and are not identified by that, except that I thought we would all three get out of that situation and be able to help others. And I just, I do have, I have a lot of emotion about the fact that I did not get Grant out, so to speak. But I also am a very deeply devoted person to God. And I have been throughout my years of what they say is actually, I'll tell my age now, 54 years of trauma, which obviously got worse over the years. And so I'm very devoted to God, and I'm very devoted to the Bible, and I use that as my guide. And so I know there's a path and a plan, and that's what keeps me grounded through all of this.
Yeah, when I describe myself, the first thing I say is Dad, too.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
I'm a mom. I'm mom first. Yeah.
Yeah. I know exactly how that feels.
Really, mom only. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just mom. And then after that, I sing, vocally. I do different things. I'm a pharmacist, but those are really not who I identify with. I identify with mom.
So you played basketball in college, and Grant was 6'5", right? Okay.
Yeah.
How tall is Gracie?
I'm not 6'5".
How tall are you?
I'm very, well, let's see. On the stats sheet in college, with my high tops on, right? Because back then that was the Converse ones, right? Yeah. That are so popular again today, the canvas ones. I think I tapped in at 5'5".
Get out of here! Okay, yeah, that's like my daughter. When my daughter
but we were stretching it a little bit. So, but Gracie is 5'2" and a quarter.
Okay,
he wants to add that quarter.
Okay.
Yeah. So Grant is the one that was just. Let me say it this way: at the time that we were all living together, the four of us, there was no one in the household taller than 5'8". And then Grant came along, and he was 6'5", 210. So it was really great.
Yeah, that's at 18 years old, so he still had a couple inches left there.
He actually, his growth plates were all still open. He was still growing. Yep.
Oh, no, incredible athlete, too. Basketball,
yes.
Baseball, everything. Well, but tell us about Grant, though. What was he like as a kid?
Oh, goodness. Grant was an old soul from the beginning. He spoke very early. He exchanged conversations with adults at 2 and 3 years old that I couldn't hold today. Made eye contact. He loved books, and he would ask for books for Christmas. And I was afraid that, if other people found out Santa was bringing books, that they would think I was trying to indoctrinate him into being some sort of scholar or something. But he actually asked for them. He would sit and read for hours, or at least at 2, look through them. And at 3, he started reading. So he was a very intelligent, beyond his years. He was very wise. He had a sense of knowing about him, which made disguising things at Christmas, present-wise, and things like that very difficult. He was also full of love, and so full of joy, and so full of practical jokes, and so full of fun. The biggest thing I think he's known for today even is his love for others, for all mankind, not showing no status, no social status, no racial status, no anything. Grant loved every person he ever met, whatever they did, and developed a connection and a bond with that person. And as a matter of fact, when this happened, his classmates, his schoolmates, and baseball teams he's played on over the years got together and made a bracelet, and most of those kids still wear it. It's Love Like Grant. At Philippians 3:2, and that's where it talks about lowering yourself beneath everyone around you so that you can serve them. And that's really the way Grant loved, but also Grant, and I left out my athletic. That's a huge part of our life. We are all athletes. Gracie, Grant, and I are all athletes, and we love sports. And, I have a cable company just so I can make sure I don't miss football or baseball or whatever, basketball, whatever's coming on. Gracie runs track, and Grant was a phenomenal baseball pitcher and a middle infielder, but his pitching was what drew attention from college D1, Division I coaches. And he just was such a competitor. You were not going to come, if you're a batter, you were not going to come out of the box with a hit if Grant was on the plate and was on the mound. And then basketball, he used to say baseball was his sanctuary when he crossed the white line. And he would say basketball was where he let his tensions out. So he got really, with what we've been through in our lives, you can imagine with a lot of anger built up over the years because of what we all endured at the hands of their father, my former person, Aaron Solomon. Grant's basketball games could become really wrestling matches. So all 6'5" of him would use all that aggression rebounding, and would use all that aggression blocking out, and so he was just a character. He was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful soul. Everything he touched turned exactly the way it should have for him. He just had that knack and ability. He loved the Lord, and goodness, we've been through so much, and the kids were both had just begun thriving at such a high level because we had just gotten away from that environment that we had been in. But yes, he was basketball, baseball. Baseball was his biggest, and he was just a lovely, wonderful, bright light, and really my North Star. And I still find myself searching for him in crowds, even subconsciously. I look at someone and I'll catch myself going, oh, no, that wasn't him. And so I still am searching for my North Star in a lot of ways, but in most ways. But I do believe that he's in a better place, and I know there's no suffering. So I have to reground myself so that I can continue fighting. Because if I don't, I will allow myself to become. It will destroy you. It will just losing the child or losing him like we did. It's just will completely destroy me, and I can't let that happen. I've got Gracie, and I've got a fight to keep, and I also have my own things that I need to be doing. So, and I know Grant wouldn't want that.
Oh, I can't even imagine, and it's so fresh. It's just happened 2020.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us an idea? What happened that day with this vehicle?
Nothing. Now, the stories that
yeah, why don't we do this? I usually say this. Why don't you tell us the official story and then tell us what really happened?
Yeah, so Grant, so his father had asked him to meet him at a baseball facility an hour away from home. We're in Franklin, so if you want to look at Franklin and you want to look at Gallatin, Tennessee on the map, it's an hour drive and across a couple of different interstates. And he wanted him to meet him out there for a Major League Baseball pitching evaluation. And what that is an evaluation using computerized methods that determine, what you could do to get more speed on your fastball. Could you use your legs more? Could you, and where you fit into that Major League Baseball arena. So what is your best pitch when you're, when the counts 4-2? What is your best, what do you go to? And Grant was against it very much. The coaches that Grant had talked to about it were against it. The only one that was for it was his father. And Grant had just had COVID. So this was early COVID when they were just letting the kids back out on the open field baseball fields. And the whole baseball team, Grant played for a very wonderful organization here in the Middle Tennessee area that's one of the best baseball programs in the United States. And they all contracted COVID. And so Grant was one of the last that actually came down with it. And that was from us traveling and staying in hotels. And so Grant was one of the last that came down with it. And so he had it about 2 weeks, but was just really struggling getting over it. So, of course, Grant, the incident happened on July 20th, 2020. So if you put it in your mind, that's a Monday. It was July. It was incredibly hot. But on Friday, I had Grant at the pediatrician and the general practitioner, and they were both working together because Grant's lungs were not responding properly from having COVID, and they had chest x-rays done, and they had placed him on an inhaler. So Grant was not at all at peak performance, obviously. And so the point was, Grant's pushback to his father to not go out there to this place was, I'm not at peak performance. I don't have my full breath capacity. I don't feel well. Why would you pay this large amount of money for me to have this evaluation when I'm not even 100%?
How much was it? The fee? How much was the fee?
I don't know. They won't talk to me. That place has since closed, but it was around $1,500 to $2,000 depending. Okay. And it would have been a private. This was supposed to be a private lesson, and that's what everything hinged on. Grant would go places. That was the first time he and Aaron would be alone in 2 years. So 2 years prior, and we can catch everyone up toward after we kind of talk about this day. But 2 years prior, Grant had put Gracie in his truck and ran them away to my house. And so they never returned to his house. So for 2 years, they might be out at a ball field or something where there's a lot of people out, but never in an alone situation. And Grant told him he did not want to go. But Grant would go places in order to keep Aaron from wanting to bother Gracie. So on that Sunday night, he asked me to, text his father and tell him he doesn't want the father to be there, that he's an adult now. He just, turned 18 6 weeks earlier, and he did not want him to come with him. And I did, and we got no response, and that's not unusual. No response means what we've said is offensive, or he's discarding us or dismissing us. And so Grant said, I'm going to go. And so the next morning, Grant got up, and as he always did when he was happily going to take the hit, the lick, so to speak, for the family, he got up and he got dressed and he ate his breakfast and he stopped and he told me goodbye and he loved me just like we always do when he takes off in the morning. And he walked over to the door and he stopped. And before he walked outside, he looked and turned back to me in the kitchen and he goes, "Hey, Mom, I don't want to die in Gallatin today." And I just hit the mom button express. I don't know how fast I got over to the door. I was like, "You're not going. What are you talking about? You're not going." I went into full panic mode. Are you worried about your lungs? What are you? He was like, No, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I said, "No, wait, you're not going." So I texted Aaron. I said, "Grant is afraid he's going to die in Gallatin today. He's not going." And he goes, "That's okay. I'll be there." No. And then an hour later, Grant said I was not going. And I knew that I'd offered everything from sitting in the car and just driving my own car. I've offered everything to prevent from being a helicopter parent, just to be out there. And he said, no, you're not going. And an hour later, I got a phone call that Grant was dead in Gallatin.
Couple of quick questions. You said this is like an hour drive away.
Mm-hmm. It takes about an hour. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was Grant accustomed to driving an hour in the car by himself?
No.
So that's unusual too. And there was an appointment that day for him to show up there, and he had an appointment with somebody to evaluate him.
Well, that is the crux of Aaron's story.
So you haven't confirmed
that day. We have confirmed that Grant did not have an appointment.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Now
we have full confirmation that there was no appointment for Grant that morning from the manager, the eyewitness that just came forward. He was the manager of the facility, and he's the one that came out and saw Grant under the truck with no blood and no injuries, and said Grant was just kind of stuck. When he came back out, Grant was badly beaten and bleeding, but he's the one that didn't understand why Aaron was in the parking lot. And so Aaron immediately started telling him, hey, we're here for an appointment. We're here for an appointment. And he's like, no, you're not. If you were here for an appointment, I'd be setting it up. And to top that off, like right after this happened around 8:40, well, according to 911 call, it happened around 8:42, 8:43, but there was a 15-minute window that Grant was there prior to a 911 call. So the facility would have opened at 9 for what should have been a private baseball evaluation. That means no other athletes would be there, just Grant and the evaluators. And at 9 o'clock, a young athlete, I feel so bad for this athlete, but a young athlete arrived for his just regular pitching workouts, because they also did workouts there and et cetera. And he was in his baseball gear and he was going in to do his pitching. This was happening in the front of the building. So that's another piece of proof that there was no private lesson, other than obviously the manager saying he didn't have an appointment that day.
Would it be unusual for them to take two cars? Like, if it was my kid, I'd go pick him up,
Well, yes, in a normal, in a healthy relationship, yes, but no, Grant would not ever get in the car with him, and vice versa. Aaron wouldn't try.
Gotcha. Now, what about the custody arrangements? Your daughter Gracie, what was her custody situation?
At that time, well, he had taken the children out of their beds in 2013 in the middle of the night, and then gone into court. And he bought the children. And I spent the next 5 years fighting everything from that I had a mental illness to the next thing, because that didn't work. They went to drug addiction. And when that didn't work, we moved to crazy, and it just kept going. And I kept fighting for them. So he had full everything. Literally one day I'm mom and the next minute I'm not.
Gotcha.
And he's painting me out to be some sort of demon or something with horns and.
No, trust me. I went through my audience knows I went through family court too, and we all know this. Everybody knows that deal.
So we know.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did that, and so he had everything. But in 2018, when Grant ran away with the two of them, he still had everything. But because we had at that point, without going into too much of the court drama, we had a court-appointed counselor who knew there were problems and worked to shield the children from him. And they lived with me, but I had no custody of them. Aaron had everything. However, she was a buffer between and was trying to promote healing and things like that in order to keep him at bay. So they stayed with me, but then after Grant turned 18, of course, he was out of the custody agreement. He was out of everything. Gracie was still in it. Now, roll forward after all this has happened. Aaron came after Gracie 2 months to the day that Grant passed. And he said, I'm taking her one way or another. And that wasn't going to happen. I basically saved my daughter from the same fate of my son because of the trauma and everything she had to go through during that time. And we had just lost Grant. But out of that came a restraining order, and out of that also came a no contact order, which she still has today. And I have full 100% custody of Gracie, and I have had since September of 2020. So what Gracie says is that Grant knew what he had to do to save her, and he did. He did. So I know you asked me about that day.
Yeah.
the story about that day is that, okay, so if you imagine the baseball facility, and I'm sure, your listeners, some of them may have heard about the story. Some may want to go look at pictures. There's many out there. But the pictures I just want you to know are not like being at the scene, because the depth is very difficult. We've had a difficult time even with drones getting the depth perception proper. Mm-hmm. But the building is on a hill, metal building, and the story that Aaron tells, and it's changed 5 or 6 times, but this is the crux, is that he parked up next to the building, facing the building, and that Grant then parked beside him on his right, facing the building, 30 minutes before the facility was going to open, and that Grant was getting out of the truck Grant drove a truck, getting out of the truck to get his baseball gear out of the back of the truck, which right there is a problem. Grant didn't keep his baseball gear in the back of the truck. Mm. He always kept it in the cab. Baseball pitchers are meticulous about that glove, and they're meticulous about their gear, and that's it.
And also luck, those rituals they all do. Any kind of professional athlete.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, because this is another. Grant didn't go through his morning ritual, and that morning ritual would be to pull up, sit somewhere. This is before a game, before a workout, before anything. He's going to sit somewhere a little while, and he's going to have the music jamming, probably some rap, whatever fires him up, and he's going to have a cold drink from Sonic's, something like that, where he's like chilling in the car, getting his vibes going, ready to go in there and do his best job. And but he is going to text his girlfriend, Hannah, everywhere he went. That was his ritual. He never, before he got out of a car, he would always, anywhere there were Starbucks, wherever, it was cute. They would each snap each other a picture and then go do their due. Well, that morning, he didn't snap Hannah at all.
Gotcha.
And that meant his routine was completely broken. So Aaron says he's got out immediately, went to the back to get his gear, and Aaron says he looked down at an email on his phone, and when he looked back up, the truck was gone. And he got out of his car, and he looked, and so we're on a hill and an incline, and so there's about 60 feet of that aggregate concrete that like an old basketball court that's just ragged and torn. Okay. So there's about 60 feet of that type of asphalt, and then it immediately drops off into one of those, like a culvert drainage ditch deep. It's about a 10-foot drop, maybe 11, and then that starts kind of grassy and dirt, and then it turns into riprap. And if we don't know what riprap is, that's where the quarries are blasting those big rocks up to fill the drainage ditches, the government drainage ditches on the sides of roads. So those rocks are huge, and they have a lot of jagged edges, and it's difficult to walk on them. And that filled this culvert-like ditch area, and that ditch area was in a V. So Aaron says when he got out of the vehicle, he looked, and the truck was down in the. He says at one point he heard it hit, and one point he didn't. One point he couldn't find Grant. But the bottom line was that the truck was down in the ditch, nose down, facing the building, on the other side of the ditch, and that Grant, at first it was he couldn't see him. He never saw him. Then now he says, yes, I saw him, and I immediately called 911. So he says he called 911. The 911 call obviously is on all the websites. It's also on Freedom for Gracie on Instagram. Is a page that if you want to do a deep dive on everything, you just go to the front of that and follow it all the way back to the current. But it has the 911 call, which has been called into question by so many different experts. It's just a very atypical, unemotional 911 call where he's trying to tell a story of what happened. And what he was telling them was that the truck must have jumped out of gear, and he must have not left it in park. It must be malfunctioning, and it has dragged his son. He always referred to him as son, like a third party instead of Grant. It just dragged his son, dragged him across the asphalt. This 6,000-pound Toyota, it was a Toyota Tacoma, dragged him across the asphalt, down into the rocky ditch, and over to the opposite side, and he was now laying flat on his back with his hands crossed across his chest, with face up, with his head toward the building. And he never went down to Grant. He left him down there. The 911 operator at one point.
Overwhelming to try and climb down there, or is it kind of? Would you try it?
No.
Would you risk going down there?
Would I try it? I would have. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the. No,
okay.
As if it would even matter. But listen, I could have I would have probably dove in it like I was diving in a pool.
Yeah.
But it's not that deep. It's not that jagged. I've been in it 100 times since. This is just him standing at the top of a ditch, watching his child die.
Right. Real quick.
At one point, the 911 operator said, "Go down to your son,"
right,
and he refused. Yeah.
Now, how about this? When you have a death like this, personal injury attorneys, it was sue the truck manufacturer, the property owner. Was there ever a lawsuit in any of this where this was looked into?
No.
Oh.
No, and there's still an option for that. Now, we've been in contact with Toyota, who do not want to come and do an accident reconstruction, even though their vehicle was blamed. We've also talked to we also talked about the property and the danger of having young people park on this. It was a very perilous area. I always felt it was very dangerous for kids to park there. But let me just say those things are coming. How about that? And yeah. So, but after he passed, we looked at wrongful death. This is a very corrupt state. Attorneys just don't want to take it because of who all's involved. And that's what we found out since is that what actually happened that day was that Grant's truck never made it to the top of the hill. Grant's truck was at the bottom of the hill, and that's where Grant wore goggles, so he couldn't see 2 feet in front of his face without his sports goggles on or his regular Harry Potter glasses that he was famous for. And so you can imagine this big curly-headed 6-foot guy, or goofy with his big Harry Potter glasses on. He's so funny. I'm sorry to digress, but the truck never made it to the top of the hill. The truck was at the bottom. I had the forensics done on the truck Aaron had the truck. The police didn't. Let me go back.
Yeah.
So from Aaron's story, you got him on the phone finally with 911. He says, I've got 3 guys here. And he's yelling down to these 3 guys who are with Grant, asking them what's going on. But nobody's trying to get the truck off. Nobody sounds panicked. Nobody's anything. And then you can hear one of them respond a couple of times. And then from that, you start to hear sirens. Sirens show up. Now we've got officers on the scene. They were interviewing people, and then some certain officers, Ty Wilson showed up, and McKelvey showed up, and they shut down the entire scene and took the word of the father as to what happened and said it was an accident and closed it. And literally within 54 minutes, my son went from alive to no longer being on this earth and just being discarded. The truck was never impounded. The truck was just sent to a mom and pop lot. They didn't do an accident reconstruction. They didn't close the interstate. They even left Grant's goggles, his baseball cap, and his cell phone in the ditch. And that was found by someone at 3:00 that afternoon.
Gotcha. Okay, so because there's a Daily Mail article where an employee of this facility saw people out with a disturbance outside. He goes outside. He sees your husband up on a hill on a phone, and he sees 3 guys in high visibility vests, yellow vests. Mm-hmm. But these guys disappear then by the time the cops come.
Yes. That's what we're supposed to believe, yes.
And you believe that your ex-husband there had some type of relationship with these cops? Because he was like a local celebrity, your ex-husband,
yes.
Right?
Yes. He used to be on Channel 4 News he was on there for 15 years. So he was a very popular sports anchor, and then he became a news anchor, morning news anchor. So he's a very popular. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So,
and he also developed very, very very strong relationships and bonds with politicians and with the governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee. And so the director of Homeland Security in the Tennessee Highway Patrol, Jeff Long. So, I mean, there's really no one that he's not connected with because of that. Now, he was fired from that position in 2008, but his contacts still remained, including in the music industry and places like that as well. So he's a very well known. As a matter of fact, on the 911 call, the first thing he makes sure she hears is, "This is Aaron Solomon." This is Aaron Solomon. He said it multiple times. I want to make sure your audience knows that, obviously, if they're thinking about, oh my goodness, he was dragged across all these all this pavement and down into this ditch. And I mean, from my even perspective, taking myself out of this, if it wasn't my child, I'll think, oh my gosh, he had to be marred to death. He had to be, there had to be grinding of the skin. There had to be scratches, scrapes, broken bones. He's been trapped under a truck. So there has to be burns because the truck had been hot, driving out there for an hour. But Grant had no injuries. When I got to the hospital, he was already pronounced, and they didn't have him they didn't have him waiting on a ventilator. He was cold, but he had nothing. He looked perfect.
And then what was the cause of death?
He had one injury to the back of his head around the occipital area. If you're using your own hand to be your left hand to touch the left back of your head. So they said he had a skull fracture, and that was it. He had a skull fracture. His cause of death was cardiac arrest due to blunt force trauma, and that was the only mark he had.
And they closed down this investigation. This is a homicide. It's not a murder, but this is a homicide, death due to another. And there's no investigation of that.
None. They closed everything from the time it was supposed to have happened. So let's mark the 911 call because there's more time in front of that. But it was closed down within 57 minutes. The scene was completely cleared and everyone was gone. They took, at the hospital, Aaron denied an autopsy. He denied a postmortem exam, which is something more or less of x-rays, not as invasive, x-rays. Also, the state of Tennessee requires by law, anytime what the police were calling a vehicle plus pedestrian incident. They are required to perform a toxology.
That's right.
On the patient. There are no blood draws. There are no urinalysis. There's nothing.
A toxicology. They would have to perform that.
They didn't.
Well, then, is this? Have you made complaints to the Civilian Review Board and that kind of stuff?
Yes. I'm in the process. We've been doing that. We were so busy in the beginning collecting evidence because of the history and what I'd seen happen to us before. I still have trouble even coming up with how to say. I don't know how to say he's laid to rest or when we put him in the grave. I don't know how to say that. But when everyone that was close to Grant, all of his guy friends, which was massive, all of his baseball friends, parents, even parents that weren't in I have a very small circle, so even parents that weren't in my circle, right, they were all coming saying, Aaron did it. And they were all putting it together. So I knew on that Saturday when they laid him to rest that, he's coming back up. And that's what I told him as he went down. I said, you're coming back. And then on Monday, my best friend Melanie and I took off to Gallatin. And we started on that. I slept on Sunday. I took a sleeping pill for the first time on Saturday night to try to sleep. I slept a while on Sunday. And then we were up on Monday in Gallatin. And on Tuesday, we went to see the truck. And we were so busy for a couple of months. They're just gathering all the evidence because at this point, remember, no one believes this is more than what they said it was. That somehow Grant's truck has run over him. He's caused it to run over himself. But we believed otherwise. So we quickly started gathering documentation, knowing that it would disappear if I didn't. And then we went through trying to get, we didn't really have to try, but we went through talking to attorneys and people that are not in the good old boy network. Now, Tennessee is a good old boy network. Tennessee is as corrupt as it comes. I'm finding out more and more about that every day. But anything I say to you or anyone else, if anyone's ever heard me say, I can back it up with paperwork. I've got documentation. I've got recordings. I've got everything. And I learned that through that darn divorce court area and arena, because if you don't have proof of it, it's not true. So I learned to have proof of everything. And we didn't have to convince anybody that were the good salt of the earth people, police officers, detectives, private investigators, a former SWAT FBI agent, all of these people, the minute they see what I've talked to you all about, which is really the surface level, immediately they know it's a homicide.
Yeah, we've barely scratched the surface. Yeah, we've barely scratched the surface.
We've barely scratched the surface, but you can clearly see. And then the police officer hung up on me. We tried to get an attorney, he tried to get very connected attorney, tried to get a meeting with the police chief for me just to, I wanted to just talk to him about what happened and how they came to that conclusion. He would not meet with us. The district attorney, Ray Whitley, would not meet with me. He did meet with my private investigator. And he said, at the very end, he said, there's no evidence. And Dan said, that's because you didn't collect any. That's why there's no evidence. So we've got the evidence because eventually Aaron sold that. Eventually, we had eyes on the truck at Aaron's house. Yeah. And the truck disappeared. And when the truck disappeared in February of 2022, February of 2021, we started hunting for it online.
Wait, real quick. The truck is in Aaron's name. Was there ever any kind of insurance payout on this at all?
Okay, the truck was actually in his parents' name, and he had the insurance on it. And yes, so what had happened was when my friend had a friend who worked at like car something, was able to run the VIN number and found it on an auction lot, and it had been auctioned that morning. It had been totaled. So we found it. I called the auction lot. They stopped the sale and they sold it to me instead. And then we found the insurance agent. My PI did. He was in hiding. We found him, and they received payout for a totaled vehicle. And we also believe. And let me just go back and say the vehicle's not totaled. What has happened is even me with a crowbar could pop the gas cap off, and I could pop the lights off, and and everything is just laid in the back of the vehicle. It was a fake, a fraudulent totaling. And everything was just, all the pieces were just laid in the back. The insurance agents paid on that. We also believe that they turned it in as a homicide. We've got people working on that right now. So that, like for injury, the vehicle caused injury or injury to another person. We also believe that was paid out. And I also want to go on to say that, in case this has gone as high as the Attorney General in the state of Tennessee, Jonathan Scrimetti, and our Governor Bill Lee, and that we did a FOIA on the Attorney General's office, and then we did a FOIA on Bill Lee's office for anything that says Grant Solomon, and we got a memo back where the Attorney General sent a memo to Governor Lee with talking points for Grant Solomon when he would be asked about it at pressers. And they call it a homicide.
No, it's definitely a homicide.
Homicide.
It's a homicide.
Yeah. Well, we've got the Attorney General calling it a homicide, but won't do it. But then the Attorney General said, well, and there's also insurance fraud, which needs to be investigated by federal. But nothing has come up. They will not move.
Oh, let me just stop you for a second. We're talking to.
They're going to move.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
talking to Angie Solomon. The website is freedomforgracie.com. There's a GoFundMe at Justice for Grant. And also, too, there's a Twitter at Dr. Angie Lee. And there's an Instagram at Freedom for Gracie. We only got about 12 minutes left, okay? So we're going to have to have you come. We're going to have to have you come back, okay? But
I would love.
But what's the backstory to this? What would make you so suspicious? Why would a father kill their own son, 18-year-old son, hero kid, basketball player?
Right, and somebody that he lived through vicariously. This was his trophy. Grant was his trophy, and Grant. Well, it's very simple. Grant was. All of those years, the reason that Aaron ran with the children was because Gracie finally came to me at 5 years old and told me what her father was doing to her in the bathtub, which would be putting things up into her private. And she didn't want to take a bath anymore, ever. And that was when I was very isolated, and people who've been through domestic violence, these words will ring through. He had isolated me. He had taking control of all the bank accounts. He had beaten me down, and if anybody can be beaten down, if I can be beaten down, anybody can. So I just want people to really take that message home. And if you feel like you're being beaten down right now, get out. Don't wait. Because once I started moving to get us out, when Gracie told me that, I confronted him. And he said, yes, I do. I do that to her in the bathtub. I do that. I stick things up. And so there was the sexual abuse became worse. And I had 6 weeks at that moment to get us out. I didn't know that, but it was 6 weeks to the day that he came into a large multi-million-dollar trust from his biological father who passed in Vietnam. And that trust, the day he came into the trust was the day that he took my children from their beds in the middle of the night. He drugged me and took them from their beds in the middle of the night and told them I had died. And they lived like that for 8 months thinking I had died. And we went through the next, we didn't see each other for 3 years. But I was fighting in court. And the entire time that we're talking, Gracie was being sexually abused by him, and Grant was trying to protect her. And they lived their entire lives like that until in 2018, Aaron, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can even say this on the radio, but the R word, BED.
Okay.
Right. Her in Asheville, North Carolina on a baseball trip. And that was when Gracie never went back again. She was never alone with him again. Grant got them out of the house. Now, Grant had seen this all these years and knew that the courts had stripped me of all my rights and there was nothing I could do. And he was 18. His dream was to play college baseball, but he was not leaving. For one, he wanted to recapture his childhood that had been taken and stay with Gracie and I. And the other was that he was not leaving his sister with the idea that his dad could come back after her, because we knew Grant was protecting us. We knew that. He shouldn't have had to, but we knew Grant was protecting us, but we had no idea how much until he was gone and Aaron came. So I want you to know that Grant was working 24/7 to protect Gracie. When he turned 18, he had his friend had come forward, one of his best friends. They had Taco Bell, 2 a.m. in the morning, and about 3 weeks prior to his death. And he told his friend that he was going to go to court on his own. He was getting an attorney. He was going to get full custody of his sister, and he was going to expose his father for everything that he is and that he has done to Gracie. And Aaron was not going to allow that to happen.
Okay, a quick question, though.
Now,
you said that the father took the kids out of the bed in the middle of the night, and then you didn't see them for 8 months.
Right.
You could have gotten some kind of an emergency visitation order. What happened with that?
I tried. The judge took one look at me and said, "You're mentally ill, and I can tell from here, and you need to have a mental evaluation, and you're a liar." And let me just go back to preface that this person that he's saying this to, the day before that he took the children, I was working on a Medicare call. I was and I still am an expert trial witness, a pharmacist for the state of Tennessee. And I was working on a Medicare fraud case for them. And I was also a pharmacist. And I walk into this courtroom and I'm all of a sudden someone I'm not. And there's nothing that can be done to convince this judge otherwise. I later found out that my parents, who, yes, have always been on the side of Aaron, had met with the judge in private chambers with Aaron, which is also illegal, prior to my coming in, and told them that they want the children removed. And then there was money exchanged, and that's what happened. So I had nothing. The judge even told me I would have less visitation with my children than any murderer, rapist, prostitute that in the 14 years he had been a judge that had ever come through. And I'm not trying to toot my horn, but I'm a very beloved person. I love people back as much as, they love me. It's very well known, my goodness. And all of a sudden my world just became something that I wasn't. And my children, the most painful part of this is that my children, who I promised to protect, were with their abuser. And there was nothing I could do. And I literally rent my clothes, just like Job talks about in the Bible. I could not bear that. But this judge, even after 6 years, he finally put me in jail. He said that I wouldn't stop saying that this good man was abusing my daughter. And he put me in jail to teach me a lesson.
That's a rough road, man. When you go in there making that accusation, and you're uphill. And by the way, this thing of this quote of of a judge saying, "I know you for 5 minutes. I can tell you're crazy." I've heard that before. Okay, the youth people think that kind of stuff doesn't happen, man. These judges.
No, but he said I took one look at you when you walked in the door, and I was like, "What?" Yep. Like, is he talking? I literally looked around the room because I was under the impression, not knowing anything about divorce or divorce court. Listen, here's the other thing. If Aaron had said, "Let's get a divorce," I would have said, "Let's go and let's." People do those things at an attorney's office amicably, or maybe not amicably, but you don't have to go to court. But my first appearance was in court, and I found out he has filed divorce. It's just supposed to be where the children will be staying during that time period. That's what my attorneys told me.
Yeah.
And boy, were we just and that was in 2013. So since then, there's a lot more that's come out about coercive control and about our courts and about family courts and about what goes on and sociopaths and psychopaths, which Aaron has been diagnosed as psychopath, sex addict. You can go on down the list. But back then, those words weren't out there. Those words weren't out there on the internet. So I thought I was involved in something where I was very alone. And now I can look back and I can read through so many other people going through that same thing in family court at the same time we were. But I just thought I was alone because the networks hadn't formed yet like they had today. And Grant was going to do that. He was going to get custody of his sister. He was not going to Harvard. Aaron had lost control of him. Aaron wanted him to go to Harvard to play baseball. Grant said, I'm staying home. I want to be home with my girlfriend. And home would be Franklin, Nashville. I'll play ball at Vanderbilt or I'll play at Belmont. I'm going to stay close to my mom and my sister. And I want to work. I don't want any more of your money. So, money's the way they like to control them. I don't want anything else. I'm going to be a man on my own. So all of those things were giant, giant threats to Aaron, who lived completely through him. And he was going to expose Aaron. And let me just go ahead and say that Grant had seen a lot more that his father was doing besides just Gracie. But Gracie was his main motive. Gracie was the motive. And being a narcissist and a psychopath, that was not ruining Aaron's reputation, was not something Aaron was going to allow. And so Aaron lured him out to Gallatin, and with a false impression that there was an appointment that he must make, even with COVID. And Grant went, and Grant didn't come home.
Let me ask you this, though. To pull something like that off, you got to be like cool as a cucumber. You got to have some kind of experience in doing these kind of things before. Did he have that kind of a lifestyle, that kind of a life of experience to pull something like this off? Yes. I mean, he had tried just between the months of January and May of 2013, when he took the children from their beds, and I'd found out about Gracie and then taking the children. He had attempted to kill me 6 times. And the 6th one was the worst. And so, but also, when we went, and again, I have transcripts of this if people want to see this, but when we went into juvenile court after Grant had passed, we were in the front of the same magistrate, and the counselor that was given to us by the courts, right? So she had made a statement on Gracie's behalf. She was cross-examined by Gracie's attorney during that procedure, and they asked, do you believe that Aaron could have planned and killed Grant? And she said, well, her response was, I don't want to believe that, but I have seen with my own eyes how he has an impulse anger disorder, and if that hit him where he's out of body and dissociated from himself, like a dissociative identity disorder, and she said, I've my own eyes, then yes, he killed his son. And where is Gracie today?
Today she's in the other room.
Okay.
Today's rest day, but Gracie is with me.
Okay.
She's we've been together inseparable since 2018. We've been through a lot, but I do want you all to know that she's thriving. We miss Grant terribly, and we feel the gravity, but we're both fighting just as hard for her and for him. She wants justice for her brother. So if anyone wants to Google Grant Solomon or Gracie Solomon, you'll see that in September of 2020, Gracie wanted to do a video of her life story because her fear was that she would die because we felt like Aaron was coming for her next. So she at 13 looked at me, and actually I'm sitting in my bedroom. She was right beside me the day that she said this on the other side of the bed, and she said, "Mom, if I die, then the truth dies with me." And so she said, "Can I make a video? Maybe it will make me feel better." So I said, "Sure, let's do that." And it was very good for Gracie to be able to sit in front of a camera and tell her story. And then we were just going to put that video away for Gracie to know that if God forbid something happened to her, so her story is recorded for her to live on past her. And in March of 2021, when we realized the magistrate was going to give her back to Aaron, Gracie said, "Release my video. It will save our lives." And I said, I didn't understand what she meant. But she said, "I mean, get it on social media. Kids do it all the time for other things. It will save our lives." And so I did what she said, and it saved our lives. And if anyone wants to see that video, like I said, you can Google Grant Solomon, you can Google Gracie Solomon, but that is on YouTube, and that's Gracie Solomon, A Cry for Help. And that's Gracie reading her own words that she had written to judges, to the FBI, to detectives about her life. And she was 13 at the time. It's Gracie Solomon, A Cry for Help. And that is why Grant was going to fight so hard for her. Now, I will say this, Grant didn't tell me he had this plan because he knew that I would say no. And he knew that he would do it in spite of me. So he just didn't tell me. So I found out when the friends came to me afterward and said, we need you to know that Grant said he was going to do this.
Well, on that note, we should pause and have you come back.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you so much for the opportunity, but I do what I do for Grant and for Gracie and telling for Grant so that we can get this to more listeners and more supporters. And all we need is just love and support. We're working so hard to get this broken for Grant wide open, and we're very close. We have a lot of leads that I can't talk about, a lot of things going on. And also for Gracie, we have a whole arsenal for her that is planned and is coming. So, but we just need love and support and more people that's all we ask. And I just so thank you for letting me be on today to speak for him, for Grant.
No, absolutely. And we will have you come back. And just for the audience, too, I spoke to Angie Solomon for a good 15 minutes before we started recording. The woman's not crazy. Okay? Right. And the audience knows.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah.
I mean, I take care of a whole lot of patients every day, so I hope not.
I'm way crazier than she is. Okay. And trust me, I've interviewed a lot of people, and sometimes, you just say, oh, my God. But, no, Angie Solomon, we'll have you come back. Freedom for Gracie that's fine.
So true.
Freedom for Gracie is the Instagram. The Twitter is Dr. Angie Lee. Freedom for Gracie with the number 4.com. But if you just Google Grant Solomon, it comes right up. Justice for Grant. And Justice for Grant, too, is a GoFundMe, too, that they need to raise money for the autopsy and things like that, too, as well, and further investigation. Angie, if anything comes up, you get a hold of me right away. We'll put you right back on if something important.
I absolutely will.
But otherwise, let's keep in touch. Yeah, let's keep in touch with this book again in a couple of weeks, okay?
Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Good night.